The wind howled through the trees like a crying spirit, and snow blanketed the ground outside Sarah Miller's worn-out cabin in rural Montana. It was nearly midnight, and the blizzard had swallowed the world in white silence. Sarah, a young widow barely making ends meet, sat by the wood stove, mending her daughter Lily's only winter coat. Her son Tommy, just 8, was trying to read a book by lantern light. The storm had knocked out the electricity again. Life was always a struggle, but tonight felt heavier, lonelier than it happened. A sharp, metallic crash shattered the night. A screech, a thud, then silence. Sarah jumped to her feet, her heart pounding. She exchanged a fearful glance with her children. Without hesitation, she threw on her old boots and coat and grabbed a flashlight. "Stay close," she told the kids, and they trudged together through the snow toward the road. The beam of her flashlight caught the glint of twisted metal. A black truck had veered off the icy road and slammed into a tree. Its front end was mangled, steam rising from the hood like a ghost. Sarah gasped and rushed to the driver's side. Inside was a man mid-50s, slumped over the steering wheel, blood trickling from his forehead, his chest barely rising. He was unconscious but alive. Sarah didn't pause to question what he was doing out there, or who he was. The nearest town was miles away, and there was no phone service in the storm. Waiting for help wasn't an option. "Tommy, Lily, open the door. We're bringing him in." Together, they pulled the stranger from the wreck. He was heavy, and his clothes were soaked with snow, but they managed to get him onto a sled Sarah used for hauling firewood. Lily tucked a blanket around him, and Tommy helped steer as Sarah dragged the sled back to their little cabin. Inside. She cleared the children's bed and gently laid the stranger down. She cleaned the gash on his head with warm water and wrapped it in clean gauze. Tommy fed the fire while Lily heated their last can of soup. Sarah silently wondered how they'd get by until her next paycheck. Still, she didn't waver. The man stirred, his breathing rough but steady. His face, weathered by sun and age, softened in the firelight. His clothes were expensive, clearly a man of means, but now, he looked just as helpless as any human could. Sarah sat beside him through the night, checking his pulse, keeping him warm. Her mind drifted to the day her husband died in a logging accident 3 years ago, and how no one came to help. She had begged for assistance, knocked on doors, and received only closed ones. She had promised herself that if she ever got the chance to help someone, she would. As dawn broke and the storm began to calm, the man opened his eyes for a moment. Groggy, confused, he tried to sit up, but Sarah pressed a hand to his shoulder gently. "You're safe," she said. "Just rest." His eyes, clouded with pain, met hers. "Why? Help me," he croaked. Sarah looked down at her children, huddled nearby with sleepy eyes and empty stomachs. She smiled softly. "Because you needed someone, and I know what that feels like." In the silence that followed, there was a quiet kind of peace. The blizzard still raged outside, but inside the little cabin, something warmer than fire flickered human kindness. And though Sarah didn't know it yet, the man she had just saved was going to change their lives in ways she could never imagine. The aroma of broth simmering on the stove filled the tiny kitchen, mixing with the faint scent of old wood and melting snow. The warmth inside was a sharp contrast to the howling blizzard still raging beyond the frosted windows. Sarah moved quietly, ladling the last of their canned chicken soup into a chipped bowl while her children sat on either side of the worn table, watching the stranger with cautious curiosity. The man, still pale and weak, rested in a makeshift bed of pillows and quilts near the fire. His head was bandaged, and a bruise had started to bloom along his cheekbone. He stirred slightly, eyes fluttering open. Lily, just 10 but mature beyond her years, noticed first and rushed to his side with a wet cloth. "It's okay, sir," she said gently, dabbing his forehead. "You're safe now." The man blinked, his gaze drifting to the dimly lit kitchen, the cracks in the walls, the mismatched chairs, and the thin girl offering him comfort with tiny hands. He tried to speak, but his throat was dry. Tommy held out a mug of water, arms trembling just a little. "Here, Mr. Mama says you gotta drink slow." He sipped, and after a moment, his voice rasped out, where am I?" Sarah walked over with the bowl of soup, kneeling beside him. "You crashed your truck outside our place. We brought you in last night. You've been out cold for hours." He looked around again, this time with more awareness. "You live here?" His voice was laced with disbelief, tinged with concern as his eyes took in their humble surroundings: the tiny stove, the thin curtains, the patched-up walls, Asterisk Sarah nodded. We make do. Asterisk he looked at the children, now quietly sitting on the floor, watching. He saw their clothes too small, a bit threadbare. He saw the meal simple, stretched thin, and then he saw Sarah, her face tired but kind, her hands rough but gentle. Asterisk, you didn't have to help me, he murmured. You didn't even know me. Asterisk Sarah met his gaze, her voice calm and low. Maybe not. But you were bleeding in the snow and I've been alone before, with no one to help. Someone once saved me, when I had nothing to offer. I've never forgotten that. Asterisk the man looked away, his throat tight with emotion. He had known people who wouldn't stop to help a man in trouble unless there was something in it for them. But here was a woman who had almost nothing, and yet gave him everything she could. Asterisk he tried to sit up, but Sarah gently pressed him back down. You need to rest. Eat something first. It's not much, but it'll warm you up. Asterisk he looked down at the bowl of soup in her hands, humble, steaming, made with love, and something shifted in him. This wasn't just food, it was grace, compassion, humanity. Asterisk thank you, he whispered, voice cracking. Asterisk Sarah simply nodded, then turned to her children with a tired smile. Let's give him some space. Asterisk as they walked away, the man watched them go. His eyes were wet, and his chest ached not from the accident, but from something deeper. He had come close to death on that icy road, but in this modest kitchen, he had just tasted life in its purest form. He didn't know it yet, but the moment Sarah handed him that bowl of soup, something inside him had already begun to change. Asterisk the fire crackled softly in the hearth, casting flickering shadows across the walls of the little cabin. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving behind a quiet, frozen stillness. Inside, the mood had shifted to less tense, more curious. The stranger, no longer groggy with pain, sat propped up in a chair near the fire, sipping warm tea from a tin mug. Asterisk Sarah sat across from him, quietly stitching a tear in Tommy's winter hat, while her children played a quiet game of checkers. In the corner, the man studied her in the firelight, his face still pale but thoughtful, almost conflicted. After a long silence, he cleared his throat. Asterisk I suppose I should tell you who I am, he said slowly, his voice calm but cautious. My name's James Carter. The sewing needle froze in Sarah's hand. She looked up, her expression unreadable. James Carter. Asterisk he nodded. I own Carter Livestock and Land. Or did, until my son took over most of the operations. I'm not involved much these days. Asterisk the name echoed in her ears like a ghost from the past. Her heart skipped. Carter. The same Carter who had sent men in suits to pressure her late husband into selling his tiny plot of land that had been in his family for generations. The same Carter whose ranch had swallowed up half the county. In its hunger for more, she remembered the meetings, the legal letters, the stress that seemed to wear her husband down before the accident ever could. Asterisk for a moment, the room went still. Her hands clenched the fabric in her lap. Asterisk he noticed. You've heard of me. Asterisk yes, she replied, her voice quiet but sharp. A few years ago, your company tried to buy our land. My husband refused. James nodded, his gaze falling. That sounds about right. I didn't know your name then, but I remember that property. Small, rocky, not worth much on paper, but your husband stood his ground, said it meant something more. Asterisk Sarah's lips trembled. It did. Asterisk I was wrong, James said, his voice cracking with sincerity. About a lot of things. Asterisk he leaned forward, staring into the fire like it could take him back and let him rewrite the past. I built an empire by taking more land, more cattle, more control. I thought I was building a legacy. But after my wife passed and my son took over, I realized how little I actually had. I went on a drive that night to clear my head. Took a back road I hadn't seen in years. Then the storm hit. I lost control. Asterisk Sarah studied him. This wasn't the man she had imagined all those years ago, the untouchable tycoon behind desks and contracts. This was a man who looked tired, lost, softened by something heavier than injury. You've changed, she said. I'm trying to, he whispered, but I don't think I deserve what you've given me here. Your kindness, your trust. Asterisk. Sarah stood, walked to the fire, and added another log. The flames rose higher, brighter. Maybe you don't, she said softly, but neither did I. The day someone gave me a second chance. I think the world needs more of that second chances. Asterisk their eyes met not as enemies, but as people broken in different ways, finally seeing one another. And for James Carter, that moment held more power than any land deal he'd ever signed. because in that tiny cabin, with nothing left to prove and everything to gain, he realized something money could never buy: redemption. Asterisk, the sky blushed with the first colors of dawn, painting soft streaks of pink and gold over the fields. A gentle mist rose from the trees, and the air was still silent in that sacred way only early mornings know. Inside the cabin, the wood stove crackled low, warming the room as Sarah poured coffee into a tin mug. Asterisk, James stood by the doorway, bundled in a heavy coat, looking stronger now, healthier. His wounds had healed, and so had something deeper within him. He glanced back at the room that had sheltered him, the people who had changed him. Asterisk, Lily came running in with Tommy, giggling, their breath visible in the morning chill. Your truck's all thawed out, Mr. Tommy beamed. Mama and I fixed the tire. Asterisk, James chuckled, kneeling to their level. Then I guess it's time I head out. Asterisk, the children's faces fell. Sarah handed him the coffee and gave a quiet nod. We're glad you're better. Take care of yourself. But James didn't reach for the door. Instead, he turned towards Sarah, pulling a thick envelope from the inside of his coat. Before I go, he said, there's something I need you to have. Asterisk, she hesitated. What is it? Asterisk, James handed it to her gently. She opened the envelope and unfolded the papers inside. Her eyes scanned the words, her breath catching. Asterisk, it was a property deed, a 200-acre ranch, not far from where they lived, debt-free, transferred to her late husband's name, and hers. Asterisk, her hands trembled. I don't understand. Asterisk, James stepped closer, his voice quiet but steady. You gave me something I can never repay. You gave me a second chance at life, at purpose. You took me in when you had nothing to spare. You didn't ask who I was, or what I had. You just helped me, and I'll never forget that. Asterisk, tears welled in Sarah's eyes as she stared at the document, still trying to process it. Asterisk, I built a lot of things in my life, he continued, but none of it ever felt as right as this. That land, it's fertile, beautiful, full of potential. Your kids deserve a future bigger than this cabin, and you deserve peace, not survival. Asterisk, Sarah fell to her knees, the papers clutched to her chest, tears streaming down her cheeks. Lily and Tommy rushed to her side, confused but smiling, sensing something good had happened. I can't accept this, she whispered. Yes, James said softly. You can, because it's yours already. You earned it with kindness, with grace. You reminded me what it means to be human. Asterisk, for a moment, no one spoke. The fire cracked in the background, and the sun crept higher into the sky, casting a golden light through the windows. Asterisk, Sarah looked up at James, her voice breaking. Thank you, from the bottom of my heart. Asterisk, James knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. Thank you for saving mine. Asterisk, and in that quiet moment, surrounded by snow, sunlight, and silent gratitude, the world felt a little warmer, a little softer, because sometimes the most life-changing gifts come not from wealth, but from compassion, and the courage to give without expecting anything in return. Asterisk, spring had come early that year, melting the last of the Montana snow and breathing life back into the land. Where once there had been quiet, frostbitten fields and a lonely cabin, now stood a thriving ranch filled with warmth, laughter, and purpose. Horses grazed in the morning light, chickens clucked near the barn, and green shoots sprouted in freshly tilled soil. Life had returned not just to the land, but to the hearts of those who lived on it. Asterisk, Sarah stood on the porch of their new home, a modest ranch house nestled between two gentle hills. She watched her children run through the grass, their laughter echoing across the property. Lily was helping bottle feed a calf, while Tommy chased a puppy that barked with playful abandon. They looked free, alive, in a way she had only dared to dream of during the darkest winters. Asterisk, behind her, boots crunched softly on the gravel path. She turned to see James Carter approaching, holding a basket of fresh tools and seeds. He still wore his worn-out hat and dusty jeans, but there was a lightness in his eyes now, a quiet peace that hadn't been there months ago. Asterisk, you're early. Sarah smiled. Asterisk couldn't stay away. James replied with a grin. Thought I'd help Tommy mend that fence line he's so proud of. Asterisk, he won't stop bragging about it. She chuckled. Keeps calling himself ranch boss. Asterisk, James laughed, the sound rich and full. He's earned the title. Asterisk, they walked together toward the barn, passing under the tall wooden archway that now bore a hand-painted sign, Miller Ranch. It was more than a name, it was a testament to resilience, to hope, to everything they'd rebuilt from a simple act of kindness. Asterisk, sometimes I still can't believe it, Sarah said, her voice softening, that you were the man in that truck, and that this, she motioned to the land around them came from it. Asterisk James nodded, watching the kids. Neither can I, but I think maybe that storm saved both of us. Asterisk Sarah looked at him, tears brimming in her eyes, but her smile unwavering. You didn't just change our lives, James, you became part of it. Asterisk. He met her gaze, moved beyond words. In the months since that frozen night, he had returned again and again, not out of obligation, but something deeper. The ranch, the family, this life they had filled something hollow in him, something years of success and solitude had never touched. Asterisk as the sun rose higher, casting golden light over the ranch, the sounds of work and laughter filled the air. It wasn't just a happy ending, it was a new beginning, one born from compassion, humility, and the courage to open a door to a stranger in need. Asterisk. What began as a poor widow saving a dying cowboy had become something much greater, a full-circle story of grace, a reminder that the smallest act of humanity can rewrite lives, heal wounds, and build a future stronger than any storm. Asterisk. And as James joined the children in the pasture, Sarah watched from the porch, her heart full, her family whole. The snow had melted, but the warmth that remained would last forever. Asterisk. Asterisk. Asterisk.